We are excited to have Nishino America as our title sponsor for 2026. Nishino is driven by ingenuity and R&D, bringing innovative chemistry that works. They back every product with a customer-focused expert who knows your field and is ready to help. Stop guessing and find solutions today at www.nishino.net. Thanks again for Nishino for sponsoring the show and this episode of the Specialty Cropcast.
Welcome to the Specialty Cropcast on Pomes and Stones. Join us for real conversations with farmers, agribusiness owners, and industry experts as we dive into farming, products, and the business of agriculture, all from the people who know it best.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of the Specialty Cropcast. Obviously, we have Tal and myself here with you. Backward hat Steve.
Here I am.
Zach, Hoodie Zach in the corner.
Yep.
And so this episode, we're going to focus on something that I think is pretty pertinent across all agriculture.
Yep.
Which would be kind of succession planning and how to, get through those times when things are unsure and how things are going to shake out. So we have Art Littlefield with us here, and he's experienced in this matter, and he's going to help us kind of learn a little bit about other people's experiences and ways that we can kind of help others or think about preparing in the future for that, as all of us are kind of in that mid-generation between the three of us, obviously. Might not be right now, but definitely coming up in the future. So, Art, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Talon. I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Of course.
Thanks for coming.
Steve and Art got hooked up at the Great Lakes Fruit and Veggie Expo this last December.
Yep.
And we had talked about, even before the show, that this would be a good conversation to have. So Steve said, hey, I ran into a guy named Art, and he said he'd be willing to talk with us a little bit and help us get a good conversation about this. So introduce yourself a little bit. Tell the folks a little bit of your experience and your job history and what makes you an authority on the topic.
Will do. Thanks, Talon. My name is Art Littlefield, and I'm with a company called Academy Agribusiness Services Team. And we work with farmers, agribusiness owners, ranchers, growers, and landlords. And what we do is work on a confidential basis with each client. It stays within us. And most of our clients have existing advisors, such as attorneys and accountants, who have already helped them do some level of planning. And accordingly, they wonder why they want to work with us. And the answer is simply coordination or lack of coordination. Most of the people have their existing advisors. They've done an estate plan, maybe a farm succession plan, an investment plan. But in reality, they did them at different times with different people under different situations. And so there's truly a lack of coordination and missed financial planning opportunities. And what we do, if you will, is send up a drone. We used to say helicopter, but today it's drone, and look at their entire financial situation at one time, not just from a legal or accounting or insurance or investments, but across the board. And what that does is allow us to identify these coordination gaps and missed opportunities that we'll work with them on. We spend our time focusing on them and their family and future generations. It's just not where we are today. It's where we are today and where we want to be in the future.
Right. Okay. Nice. So obviously the first couple of questions are kind of pretty basic, but I feel like sometimes people aren't thinking about it until it's too late and the planning stage has gone out the window and it's kind of almost in a panic. So why is farm succession such a difficult topic for families to talk about? And at what point should a family or operation really start doing that?
Talon, that's a great question. We run into people who say, the farm passed to me fine. I don't need to do anything. I don't need any planning, and it'll just pass to the kids. And there's no effort that needs to go into this. Well, in reality, they maybe took over 20 or 30 years ago. And to say that the government has become more intense in later years, recent years, would be an understatement. And accordingly, we want to talk with them as soon as we can. Okay. they have to be open and know that this is a responsibility that they have for the family. You know, we all drive around and we see different farms with the centennial posters, signs, and that's really what we want to help our clients obtain, is to keep it going from generation to generation. And to do that, it's really not too early to talk about it at any point. You know, I've seen situations where there were two brothers, and one of the brothers' sons came home after college. And A, whose son came home, did not tell B that they were going to have a new employee. And it got to be really nasty, to the extent that one Easter did not go too well. And so you need to have an understanding and tell your partners what your vision is for the future, so that they can agree and they can share that with their children who are coming on board.
So what makes succession difficult for agriculture compared to other businesses?
Well, agriculture is a business. And so there's really no difference with ag. You know, most of the businesses that we see today are family owned, and that's what ag is. The unfortunate thing is a lot of ag children stay off the farm. They don't come back to the farm, that they see what's available as a result of going to college. And so they won't have a child that's the heir apparent that really wants to come back and spend the rest of their life like their parents did, working on the farm. Long hours, a lot of stress, a lot of things out of your control. And you will talk with them about what the future could be for them. They don't understand what the farm offers them. It offers them the growth and the value of the ground. It offers them some tax advantages and cash advantages, if you will. And you need to explain to them, and that's a lot of what we will do, is to make them aware of what their true compensation is. And I don't know if that answers your questions, Talon.
No, yeah, I always just, you think about, and like you just touched on, and I think it's the family dynamic is what always gets into it, and whether or not people are involved or they're just a part of it, and they're trying to get the benefit out of it and owning it, and they don't want anything to do with it. But if you think about it, it's like what's rightfully theirs, whatever it's their, it's their families. And so if, they would like a chunk of it. So how would you balance the fairness between on-farm siblings and an off-farm sibling?
We call that estate equalization. And a lot of that, and I'm working with one family right now where there's a son and 3 daughters that one brother has, and then there are a son and 2 daughters. And they have done a great job of communicating to the children what the future will look like, that Joe will be taking over the farm. He's been working on the farm since high school, and he's earned it. And he's put in a lot of sweat equity to accomplish what they have today. And it's only fair that he be recognized for that and rewarded, because if you look at the children off the farm, what benefits do they have? They have health insurance, they have retirement plans, they have job security, and they have stable income. Unfortunately, we don't see that a lot in farming. And we will talk with them so that they have communicated clearly their expectations for the future, so the children are not irritated, because the equalization really can come from giving them different assets, such as a house or a life insurance death benefit. The other thing that we will do is we look at the operation that they have. How is it owned? Is it owned personally? Is it a DBA, doing business as, where you have tremendous personal liability? Is there a corporation? Is there a partnership or an LLC? And a lot of what we will do is work with our clients to put LLCs in place, one for the farming operation, one for the equipment, and then one for the farm ground. And we will have what are called, with an LLC, voting and non-voting member interests. So the voting interests at day one, when it's established, stay with mom and dad. And let's say that that's 1% that mom gets and 1% that dad gets, but that's 100% of the voting interest. So then you've got 98% left to distribute. And since that is minority ownership, you have no control, you're just along for the ride. Now, a lot of the situations that we find, the children on the farm say, hey, when am I going to get this? They see their siblings with nice cars and everything, and, you know, they get up at 3 a.m. to go out and plant. So what we will do is recommend to our clients that over time, they start and gift the non-voting member interests to the child that's on the farm. At that point, everything is fine. We've explained that there's no control, that when you look at ownership, there are three aspects to ownership. There's control, growth in the value of the assets, and there's the cash flow. And it's critical that these people understand that the control will remain with mom and dad. And then when mom and dad are gone, typically the control will be passing to the child that's been on the farm, and that will be done through a trust. Okay. Then we have that child owning the 2%, making all the decisions about the farm. If they want to go buy more ground, they can do that through that LLC. But also the children, the siblings, are going to at times own some of the non-voting member interests. That is the way mom and dad may want to equalize them so that they get the cash flow from the farming operation, that there is an agreement between the LLC and the farming operation that you are going to rent the ground from us. It's a first right of refusal. And that makes the story a lot easier when the family are having a meeting, which is ideal, which is what we want to have, so that everybody knows what's happening, nobody's surprised, and they don't get irritated. Ideally, we want to have family dinners and have everybody come together and understand.
So how do you keep, I guess, what was the best way to say this is, like, obviously when you talk about it like that, where one person has gaining the control or getting that control from an older generation, what is, like, how do you mitigate the resentment between siblings then at that point? And how do you help people separate that emotion from making business decisions based on, like, that a potential resentment? How do you navigate that kind of ground?
Well, one of the first things you need to know is that you have a family meeting. Okay, who comes to the family meeting? Okay, obviously the children of the farmers. Okay, do they bring their spouses? You know that a spouse is probably going to be grilling the child that has gone to the family meeting, so at times it's best to have them. And it's just being, Talon, open and honest with them as to what's happened, that they understand how the child that's on the farm has been sacrificing for years, and that they are going to be rewarded for that.
That transfer.
We could go a little bit more into the estate planning if you want to.
Yeah. Let's
Take it away.
No.
Ask one.
I want to hear more about estate planning.
From an estate planning standpoint, a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, have said everything was great when the farm passed to me 20 years ago. And I'm thinking one situation in particular in Indiana where two brothers own the farm. And the ground that they've gotten and the equipment, $10 million apiece. Okay. they felt the transition of the farming operation to them was very smooth. And we tried to explain to them some challenges that they would be facing without having a trust, that you're going to go through probate, and that includes the delays, the expense, and the publicity of what the deceased parent's situation is. Now, a lot of transactions will involve jointly owned farm ground, whereby mom and dad own it. Well, by titling, if it's owned jointly, it's going to go to the surviving spouse. But following that, if it's not owned by a trust, it's going through probate. And I've seen so many situations where people really do not like probate, and we don't recommend it, except if you're in a situation where you could be sued. You want to get that opportunity out of the way. Okay. So with a trust, you want to avoid probate by having the trust own the assets. So if you have LLCs, you want the member to be the trust, so that at the death of one of the owners of the LLC, we're not going through probate. We're avoiding that. We can continue to operate the farm. One of my colleagues was involved with a situation that he was just starting to work on, where they had a will. Mom had already predeceased. Dad died. And he'd learned that the thing Dad wanted was to buy the 80 acres across the road, that he'd been trying to buy it from another farmer for 30 years. Well, you know what happens. Dad dies. Everything's in a will. He has a will. He goes through probate. That 80 acres comes up for sale. So his representative goes to the judge and says, I want to buy that. My clients want to buy that 80 acres. We've been trying to get it for years. And the judge said, no, there are too many heirs to this for us to take the cash out of the estate and to go buy this ground. We have to remember what the other heirs are entitled to. And so you're much better off if you have a trust and that you have explained these things. So they also, with a trust, you provide the children asset protection. And when I say asset protection, we're talking about protection from divorce, creditors, bankruptcy, lawsuits. And those can happen. You probably know better than I. You've seen examples of those lawsuits and the divorces and what impact that will have on the family. Mm-hmm. So if you have the assets owned by the trust and they remain in the trust when it passes to the next generation, there is that asset protection. If it goes outright to the children from a trust, then there is no asset protection. One of the other things that comes from that is you minimize estate taxes, that you have a situation where it remains in trust, so there are no estate taxes paid for generations in the future, okay? Because it's an asset that's owned by the trust, it's not owned by them personally. And so we're firm believers in trust, and you will have the trust be the owner of the ground, the equipment, and to protect the family. One other point, if I might make, you have a divorce. Okay? There's no trust involved. There are just wills, or there's nothing. The surviving spouse remarries. That surviving spouse with her new husband has their own family. Okay? When that spouse dies, the surviving spouse, the widow, what's going to happen? Where is the money going to go? Well, it's going to go to the second husband.
So it transfers further away from the original family.
Exactly. So who's his interest going to be? The children that they had together, his children from a previous marriage, or as you said, Talon, you're absolutely right. It's highly unusual for the children of the first marriage to receive anything.
No, that's a shame, but I bet that happens more than you think.
It does.
Do you find that there's a lot of, I guess I'm curious at like what a percentage would be of farms that don't have any trusts, LLCs, or anything like that made up? I mean, like in this day and age, I feel like there's so many stories out there that most companies probably have protected themselves in ways that you're describing. But, there's a lot of smaller mom and pop stuff, and I really wonder what percentage is out there that is prepared, kind of like you are. I know our farm is set up like that. We have a company that owns the land and then a company that owns the equipment. And then that's how the farm operates. But I'm wondering what other places or what that percentage is that's different or not set up correctly.
That's a difficult question to answer because if you ask a farmer, what does your estate plan say? You know what their answer is going to be? We're all set.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I don't need to talk with you because I got everything figured out.
Yeah.
And so, my guess is that maybe 20, 30% have done the work. You stop and you think about situations and you look at the Wrigley family company that owned Wrigley Spearmint Gum. They also own the Chicago Cubs. Mm-hmm. When the senior Wrigley died, the estate planning was non-existent. What did they have to do? Sell the Cubs to pay the estate taxes.
Wow.
And if you'd asked them, they'd probably say, we're good.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I do feel like a lot of farms are complicated. I don't know, maybe more than small businesses, right? Is it more complicated? I just feel like a lot of them have been around for, like you said, over 100 years. I feel like things get more complicated than a lot of small businesses that aren't that old.
You're right about that, Steve. Why? Because you've got an asset that's growing constantly. And what is that asset? That's the ground. Mm-hmm. And accordingly, you're going to have an estate that will continue to grow over time. The children will see what's happening, and they will want their fair share. Mm-hmm. But, you need to actually sit down and talk with all of them. But 20 to 30% having addressed these things, and then you have some that will say that I have a trust, so I'm good. Well, you need to read what's actually happening in the trust. If it's going outright to the children, that's not a good scenario. Mm-hmm. If it remains in trust and they become their own trustee, that's what you want because you've got the protection of the trust.
So how
interesting?
Do you think it's urgent then that people do it, or like it's obviously you never not urgency?
I feel like the sooner the better. Right?
Let me remake. Yeah. Let me re-say that question. I feel like is you always like when someone says we're all set, but like you never think that it's going to happen to you tomorrow, right? So it's like you're saying. You should probably, if you're thinking about it, you should probably get on it because you never know when something happens to dad. Just like you said, your dad was out around doing his thing, and then all of a sudden had a little chest pain, and turned out he was in in pretty rough shape, but he was working fine that morning, right? Mm-hmm. It was in the afternoon.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. You've got to start now. I've met with people that say, I've got another 20 or 30 years. Mm-hmm. And depending upon how their attitude, could you please give me a couple of your immortality pills that you take in the morning? You don't know when you're going to be on the wrong plane. You don't know when you're going to be in the wrong car, in the wrong lane. Mm-hmm. And, with the wealth that you have a responsibility to the family. There are 3 places your wealth can go at death. They can go to the family and heirs, individuals. They can go to charity, or they can go to the IRS. Mm-hmm. Now, our clients prefer 2 of the 3. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we'll talk to them about is if we could direct depending upon the size of the estate and everything. Some of the money from the IRS to charity, would you like that? Would you like to know that there are children in high school that now have college education paid for so they can get their degree in ag sciences and perpetuate the family farm? And you have seen this more than I, but a lot of farms are getting sold to developers or corporate farming entities, and the family farm is losing as a result of that. And we need to keep the families farming. You know,
Well, we all agree. That's for sure. There's a lot of turnover recently, and like we always say, it's always, a nice chunk right behind us just went up and poof, gone, and now it just gets leased out. I mean, it's still in agriculture, but who knows down the road? But it was a beautiful cherry orchard that's now kind of turned into just row crop to the only row crop guy. So,
well, row crop people aren't always terrible.
no, I'm not saying they're terrible. They're just there's only one pretty much big family that does most of the row crop, and some Zach's family, they do some of their own, but there's not a lot of people that are doing both. It's pretty much you guys and Sens that are the only ones that are even trying any of that. I mean, we all have plenty of ground that we probably shouldn't have fruit trees on that we're trying to grow fruit on, but it's always just more equipment, more different equipment, right? We went from cherries to apples. We had most of it. We just had to buy a couple different things to make that transition, but you go from needing little tiny tractors to bigger tractors, bigger implements,
Well,
planters, seeders.
As Zach and I were talking earlier, I mean, you've gone out and you've bought seed or trees, and you're not going to get any yield from them for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, correct.
And you've put a major investment into them, and you got a lot of risk as a result of Mother Nature and the weather, the markets with prices, and you know about those things. You could go on and on about them. I just have a kind of a basic idea of the risks that farmers have, but we want to address those risks so that the farm continues.
What does a healthy transition look like? If you see one through, what does it look like at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, the children will all get along. They will get together for the holidays. The cousins will play together. And they will want the good things to happen for the child that's on the farm. Ideally, they will understand what they have as a result of working off the farm and want to be supportive of the child that is on the farm that's continuing the growth of the operation, just like their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, their great-great-grandfathers did, and the risks that they took. And so a healthy transition is one where there's no animosity. And if a child is coming back to the farm, as I mentioned earlier, from college, that they're expected and that they're welcomed. They know what they're going to be paid. They know what their expectations are in terms of what they're going to be doing. And they also will meet with the other children, their siblings, just to make certain that they know what's happening. And that's really up to mom and dad. But we will have family meetings, and we will explain to them, this is what your parents want. And then they can ask their parents why they want that. Some parents say, well, I'm not prepared to do anything because I don't know what my children want.
Right.
Well, that's a nice approach. But again, if the children are off the farm and they haven't had those conversations, it can be very, very bad.
Yeah, it was a question that I had just was kind of thinking about was how often do you think happens where like a younger, a child of the owner of the farm comes up and wants to talk to you or someone in your industry to get that information because they may feel uncomfortable bringing it up to their parents. Does that happen?
Yeah, that certainly happens. That we will have conversation with people. I'll talk to people at farm shows, and I'll say, mom and dad are operating under the mushroom theory of management, where you keep in the dark and you dump a lot of stuff on them. That they don't feel that they really have been informed. And so we will talk with them and explain what the options are, and also suggest that they have a conversation with their parents. And, we're here in a service industry to support people that have made this country great. And we can be an advisor to them without charging them. It's just plain good human nature to help people. I think that's what we all want to do. That's part of why you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is to inform people and to help them and keep the farm going.
Exactly. So what happens if a owner or like the full votership, like you spoke about earlier, passes away with no plan?
If they do not have a trust or a will, they're called intestate. And so everything will go to the court. Attorneys will be involved, and the judges will make the decision. Now, those decisions have been made by the state of residency. So each state has its own rules of intestacy. Our experience has been that the state really doesn't know what the individual farmer wants to have happen relative to their family. So it is a really ugly situation. One of the other things is, if you have a will, as I expressed earlier, you're going to go through probate. Delays, publicity, and the expense. You don't want probate. Now, some people have a trust, and the attorney will not transfer the assets to the trust. So they're going to be taking them through probate. And, you want to avoid probate at all costs.
Why would an attorney not transfer the assets?
Maybe they want to take them through probate because there's money there. Why does a farmer only have a will? Because their advisors, their attorney, their accountant say, well, you can get through with a will. I have one situation, two brothers, $10 million estate earlier. I mentioned it earlier. When Dad died, the one brother was in charge of getting the estate through the process. He went to the family attorney, who said, well, yeah, I'll take you through your father's estate and the probate and everything. It's going to cost you $200,000 or $300,000 to do that. And the fella just looked at him and said, you're our family attorney. We're in this situation where you're going to make $200,000, $300,000 by taking us through probate. Why have you put us in a situation where we need to go through probate?
Because they want $200,000 to $300,000.
And so this individual just said to him, I will pay your hourly rate, or we're finding different legal counsel. And, I wish more information was about that, but people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
You need to have the trust own the assets.
So what kind of advice can you give to people that are kind of just afraid to bring this up to their parents or their siblings' parents or anything like that? Like, how do you get this started and have them actually follow through with it with you, because
how do you start the conversation?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's built upon trust, that you have to have confidence in your advisor, and the advisor has to have confidence that these people are for real. It's not a good situation where the advisor is more committed to this than the children are or the parents are. But you need to talk with them and say, let me guide you through this. Now, some people will do it without a fee, which is me initially. If somebody's going to pay our fee, they will know what it is. They'll know the work that we're going to be doing and what they will get out of it and how it will improve their situation. But you're making an investment in keeping people going. You want to make sure that you actually are desirous of helping these people. And as you build trust and confidence that they have in you, then they will become more active, more open, and you may even get to meet the parents and talk through with them what's going on and explaining to them what the downside is. I had one fellow where it took me 4 meetings until I finally got the real numbers. And that's okay, because it's difficult to have confidence from somebody that's out of the farming community. Now, there are some positives to that in terms of they aren't going to be at the bar and say, hey, did you hear what happened to George?
Right. Right.
You're going to be in another community and people aren't going to be aware of that. And I don't know. Steve, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Just start talking with them and see what it is their goals and their objectives are, and see if you can put together a scenario of this is what you want to have happen. This is what's going to happen with the situation that you're in today, with the documents that you have today. Is this really what you want? And is this what your children are going to want to have happen?
Mm-hmm.
So do you do like a initial, I guess I don't know if it's called like a consultation, but like someone calls and they're just inquiring about their situation. Do you find that when people do make that call that they end up following through and putting a big plan together, or do people do one call and then they go, we're all set?
When we're working with people, we're spending a lot of time talking with them, understanding what makes them tick. We know more about them than anybody else does, more than what their attorney does, more than what their accountant knows. That's because we're actually getting at them as individuals, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, and what they want to have the future and the family look like. And, one of the things that is really a concern of mine is in the ag community, people will select an attorney because everybody uses the attorney. I can think of one situation that one of my clients referred me to where grandpa passed the land to the son, and the son in turn passed the land to his son. All of them were alive. What have they done? Well, grandpa's cost basis of the ground is now his son's cost basis. There's no step up in basis. Then when it goes to the grandson, he gets the same cost basis as grandpa did. And so can you imagine if somebody paid $300 an acre for ground and it sold for $20,000 an acre?
Mm-hmm.
How much are the taxes going to be?
It's going to be quite the hit.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that puts you out of business. Make you sell your land.
Right.
You already did.
And that's, you do not want to be responsible for having the farm go away, the family farm that's been around for generations and centennial farms.
Yeah. So what advice would you give families that are avoiding the conversation or just don't quite have the motivation yet to do it?
Please talk to somebody and understand where you are. Understand the consequences of the decisions you have made. The people that are at $10 million that I mentioned earlier, they're comfortable because the will worked well. They didn't take our counsel and guidance, and that's fine. We're not going to convince somebody that they need to work with us. We're giving them an opportunity. And if they have a desire, then let's follow through and let's have a conversation so you're an informed decision maker. You know what you want to have happen, and you're going to look at the alternatives and decide whether you want A, B, or C, because these will get you to where you want to be, but how do you want to get there?
I imagine every situation is different all the time.
They're all different, but there are some basic parameters. You want to work around asset protection, and that has been, in our experience, the most important thing that people understand, and that they want to ensure that the family will not be penalized or the farm go away if there is no asset protection. And if I can, one other thing. Some of the situations where people will go with a local farmer, with the wealth that we have today in the ground and the equipment and the crops, you want somebody that specializes in this, not that everybody in the community uses. Because odds are the person in the community is going to have other responsibilities or practices of law. They may do divorce. They may do litigation. So they're not focused on estate planning and wealth transition planning and asset protection. And today we have a tremendous opportunity to protect wealth, because the one big beautiful bill that was passed on July 4th of 2025 has set an exemption amount of $15 million per person. Okay? So if you have a very large estate, or even, if it's, 10 million, you still have the same problems. You want to protect the assets, but if you've, between a husband and wife at 25 million, you've now got $30 million of wealth that you can pass. And you want, as I refer to them, a trust and estate specialist that is doing this. You don't want a generalist. And that's one of the things that we're very careful about and passionate about, is the attorney that we bring in is a member of our team, and a very important member of our team. Now, if the client has an attorney that they want to work with, then we're very supportive of that, and we will guide them. We have attorneys on staff. We don't draft documents. They're there in an advisory capacity. We have accountants on staff. We don't do tax returns. Again, they're in an advisory capacity. And we just want to make certain that the people understand what is available to them.
Yeah, you just think about it too. If you're trying to continue a multi-generational thing, this is just right at the top of the list of important stuff. And so if they're not already thinking about it, or, like you said, if it's probably so easy to say, well, 100 years ago when it passed to my grandpa, everything was fine. Well, like you said, the government involvement and everything else that happens with it, or it passes down, and with basis and taxes. There's so much to think about, how it not only affects just the transition from one generation to the next, but completely down the road. They're not making any more land, so land value just kind of goes up. And if that, that's the asset that we live off of. So definitely super important.
Yeah, and
super important.
I have a client where dad and mom passed the ground to two brothers. Okay, so they transferred the cost basis. And we're talking with them about going back to mom and dad and saying, we appreciate the ground, but there could be a problem in the future if we have to sell for whatever reason. Can we redo your estate documents so that they pass as a result of your estate documents, so we get the step up in basis, so we're protected or minimizing the taxes that would have to be paid when we sell the ground, if we sell the ground.
Yeah.
So So much to think about.
There's so much to think about, and I hope that there's definitely some people thinking about it if you haven't already, because I would imagine once you kind of open up that can of worms, you make that conversation, you contact, Art or, somebody that does a similar thing, and you open up that, like I just said, can of worm, and you realize that you're not protected in this, or how you thought things would go is not really how it's going to go. I bet it might put somebody into a panic, or, but that's probably a good panic, because you realize that there's still a chance to fix it in time before you wake up one day and everything's in a different world. So,
and you want to know what your options are.
Exactly.
Again, our responsibility is to make our clients an informed decision maker. Mm-hmm. It's not to tell them what to do. And we don't replace any of their advisors. We work with their accountant, with their attorney, with their banker, with their crop insurance people, just to make sure that we're all covered.
Right. Make sure everything's there.
Right.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions for Art before my last wrap-up one I got for him here?
No. Nope. That's good.
If someone's listening today and they've never talked about succession planning, what's the first step that they should make?
They should talk with their spouse and find out what their thought is, because it's a team. The parents are a team. Then maybe have a conversation with the children. You want to make certain that it's a non-threatening conversation. Mom and I are thinking about doing these things to protect you all. And so that George is going to continue to farm the farm, and you all expected that. But we want to protect George. We want to protect you. We want to equalize the estate to the extent that we can, so everybody's satisfied and familiar with what's going to happen, why it's going to happen, and you don't hear about it when the attorney reads the will or the trust right after the funeral.
Yeah, you don't want to hear all of that at that moment.
Right.
But open communication is what a trend I've been hearing from you from the beginning is knowing your options, and communication open and clearly with everybody involved is obviously the best way to go about it, because you form resentment when there's secrecy.
Yeah.
So
you want to have the Norman Rockwell picture with grandma with the turkey and the whole family around the farm, the table.
Right. Like you said, a successful transition is everyone's still getting together and families hanging out, and everything moves on as it did before.
Yeah.
But, well, this is obviously a super important conversation, and we just kind of touched on the basics. So as we keep doing this, maybe we'll have to have you back again, and we can dive into maybe a specific topic, or if somebody has a situation in the comments or something somebody wants to bring up to talk about, something we could think about in the future. But this has been an awesome conversation, so I appreciate you coming up to meeting us here in person. Like you said, you wanted to definitely do this in person instead of doing it, over FaceTime or over Zoom. Which we appreciate that and your time for meeting with us. And I'm glad you and Steve bumped into each other at the show. And I'm sure we'll probably see you around in upcoming shows here in the future.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you, Talon, Steve, Zach.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Art. We appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. So this is a podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, clips on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere you get your podcast, you can hear this. So this has been another great episode of the Specialty Cropcast. Thanks everybody for coming in, and we'll catch everybody in the next one.